Hello, my name is Joshua Youngs, and I'm a senior at Brandywine High School in Niles, Michigan. I also attend the Berrien County Math Science Center hosted on the campus of Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan. It is at Andrews University where all of my research has been conducted. Early in my life, I took a very profound interest in the sciences, and I always got very excited about science and read many books and went to many museums. And um, when it came time my sophomore year to take an honors chemistry class, I was incredibly excited to start learning chemistry. And in the chemistry class, every Friday we would do a lab in one of the chem labs at Andrews. And it was in those labs where my fascination with chemistry itself grew. There's so much amazing equipment and so many amazing chemicals, and the things we did were not only fun, but they were amazing, and it taught me a lot about how the world worked, and it inspired me to want to do something later in my life with chemistry. So in May of last year, as my junior year is coming to a close, I contacted my chemistry teacher, Dr. Murray, and asked him if I would be able to, over the summer, um, do research at the chemistry labs at Andrews again, um, because I had so much, or because I was so amazed by the research opportunities I had as a sophomore. And he contacted me back a week later saying that he'd be delighted to do something like that. So I met with him and we discussed what my project would be. I told him that I loved chemistry, and more specifically, the area of pharmaceuticals interests me very much. And um, he told me about a new concept that didn't have much literature about it. It was very unresearched and something very new and pioneering, called hybrid pharmaceuticals. Um, Today, most of the medicines that say they have two functions simply mix two medicines together, or will coat one medicine with another, something to maybe combat the adverse side effects of a medicine or to combine functionality. But the concept of a hybrid drug is to covalently bond two bioactive molecules together with the goal of combining their functionality um, or getting rid of their adverse side effects, or sometimes both. So when he proposed the idea to me, I I loved it, and so after that my first we organized what we were going to do. We came up with the first experiment, and it went from there. We started in about June, and it was only meant to go this summer. But after 9 months of research, I have finally, I finally gotten to some conclusions. So beginning in June, we uh, we started experimentation, and since I was very new to the research and working with the equipment, the first couple weeks was learning how to use the stuff. The equipment was learning the names of the chemicals and what was going to go on, and we both threw around some ideas on how it would all work, and we started. We determined that we were going to use aspirin as our base molecule. That was going to be what we combined the other stuff with. And after talking some more, we discussed the underappreciated molecule that is boronic acid. Um, it is used. There's a lot of literature about boronic acid being used as a antibacterial agent. It has a lot of very positive bioactivity or bioactive properties. And so the overarching goal of the research was going to be able to covalently bond aspirin and boronic acid and to test and see if the individual effects of aspirin and boronic acid presented themselves in the new hybrid. Um, so we decided that first um, we decided to test aspirin's ability to covalently bond to boronic acid in general. And we decided that we needed something for the boronic acid to be attached to that would be sort of an intermediary. So we decided that um, an aldehyde would work very well to be the intermediary. We would have a boronic acid aldehyde attached to an aldehyde group that would then be able to be bonded with the aspirin. And so our first step was to see how to best combine aspirin with aldehydes in general, because it was very expensive to get hands on some of the boronic acid aldehydes. So we decided to test its ability to combine with aldehydes in general. So we started with a compound called valeraldehyde, and it worked very well. Um, we discovered through some difficulties in the testing process that some of the reagents were contaminated, so we had to add an extra step to synthesize um, the aspirin chloride. The aspirin itself would not combine with the aldehyde. It to be converted into aspirin chloride, which has a lone chloride on the end of it, which is very reactive. And when presented with the aldehyde will latch on where the chlorine atom was. So our first step was to produce the aspirin chloride, by mixing or by treating aspirin, just pure aspirin, with thionyl chloride. And after that procedure was perfected, we we added the rest of the aldehydes. The valeraldehyde worked very well, and then we used some other aldehydes to test and make sure that it wasn't just a fluke. We had to go through and test many different solvents and catalysts. We figured out that the aldehydes would not would not combine with the aspirin without a catalyst. And once we figured out optimal catalyst and an optimal solvent to use, um, we were on our way. And I, when it finally came time, um, I figured out that the aspirin combined very well with the aldehydes after the solvent and catalysts were figured out, and the times for the reflux and the stirring. And once all the details for experimentation were figured out, that took about 3 months. And when that was all figured out, we tested the boronic acid aldehyde. And one thing that I oversaw while picking the boronic acid aldehyde is that the boronic acid aldehyde that I chose, which was 3-formylphenyl boronic acid with pinnacle esters to protect the OHs. It wasn't quite boronic acid at that point. I was going to perform a procedure to add the OHs in place of the pinnacle esters after the product was produced. But there was an aromatic ring on the boronic acid, and so and there's also some conjugation, alternating double bonds, something that we hadn't tested before on an aldehyde. So first I had to test individual aldehydes with those complexities on it, and I found that the aromatic ring was causing lots of problems. It was causing the aldehyde. To test the aromatic ring, I chose an aldehyde called p-tolualdehyde, which is very simple. It just has one aromatic ring with a methyl group on the end of it, and determined that it was the aromatic ring that was messing it up. So I decided through through research after that the boronic acid could not contain an aromatic group, and electron transfer wasn't much of a problem with it either. And after that, I finally was able to combine aspirin with the boronic acid,